Chapter 8. Play practices start running later and later. So late that most nights Mrs. Bloom orders dinner for us and we take a break halfway through to eat. I usually eat with Layla and her set design friends, but today I go grab a seat beside Miles, even though Layla has told me she thinks he's weird with his black t-shirt with pictures of planets and his baggy black pants and black combat boots. But I think Miles is interesting, with his facts about space, and his theories about extraterrestrial life, and his voice that is soft but solid, like rain on a roof. We are all eating pizza again, for the fourth night in a row, because the school has some arrangement with a local pizza place. I would eat pizza 100 nights in a row and still be happy, I say to Miles as I grab another slice of cheese pizza. He makes a funny sound. I am learning that Miles doesn't really laugh so much as he smiles with his eyes to let you know he agrees with you. Did you eat a lot of pizza back in? He trails off. Syria, I fill in for him, and briefly wonder if he forgot the name of my country or was too afraid to say it. Either answer makes me a tiny bit sad. There were a couple of places that sold pizza, I say, pausing to take another bite of my slice, the oozy, greasy cheese sliding down the back of my throat. But they were expensive, mostly for tourists. My family didn't really eat there. I watch him studying me again, and all of a sudden, my skin feels paper thin, like he can see right through me. I worry that he's eyeing my hijab and deciding that I am too different for him to want to be friends anymore. But then he says, I just think it's so cool that you've lived this whole other life. The most exciting thing I've ever done is taken my dog on a walk by myself at the park after dark. Totally boring, right? I laugh. He thinks I'm cool. A tiny voice inside of me shouts, and my heart does a victory dance. You have a dog? I ask. Yeah, his name is Sputnik, named after the space satellite. I finish his sentence. Right, he says, his eyes doing that small laugh thing again. And now my skin feels thin, but in a good way, like it's more open to the universe. He tells me about Sputnik, how she has black and white fur and her favorite thing in the world is to chase squirrels. Did you have a dog? He asks. I shake my head. And just when I'm about to explain that it's not because I don't like dogs, I just actually don't know much about dogs, because no one back home had one, Mrs. Bloom claps her hands, bringing us all to attention. Let's get back to it, Mrs. Bloom says, and I give Miles a small wave as I head back up toward the stage to rehearse, because I have a role in my American Schools play. Chapter 9. When Layla rushes over to me on Valentine's Day, I think she's going to share some gossip, and I fill with anticipation. I have secretly been holding out hope that someone would slide a card into my locker, a chocolate or a rose, and whenever I imagined this, it was always the same person, with his black t-shirts and black pants and black boots. But my locker is empty. All that is there is Layla, whose face is filled with sadness and twisted with worry. And then she tells me about the explosion, about the blood in the streets and the horror and the death. I am upset and sad about what she tells me, but confused why she is so fixated on this news when it happened in a city so far away from us. Be careful, Jude, she says, and I don't understand. She tells me that now I will learn what it means to be a Muslim in America. Chapter 10. I shrug off Layla's warning because in America I have perfected the shrug, because in America I have come to believe that things work out, because in America I have been cast in a play, and in America I have become friends with a cute boy who wears t-shirts with the moon on them. I do not believe her. I do not want to believe her, but soon I come to understand as the glances shot in my direction turned from slightly unsure to plainly hostile. Each glare demanding an apology, an explanation for something I did not do. That afternoon, I walk home from school because we do not have play practice, and I notice a man who is standing on the corner waiting for the bus. I give him a small smile, but he does not smile back. I look down at the ground, ready to be on my way, when I hear the shoes pounding on the pavement behind me. I glance over my shoulder and see that man is following me. My heart jumps up in my chest, and it hammers furiously. "Go back to where you came from," he says. "We don't want you here." There is a ringing in my ears, and for a moment I freeze, unsure I actually heard what I heard. I want to say something, to make this man understand that he has no reason to be afraid of me, to hate me, but all I manage to do is walk away. The ringing in my ears stays for a little while, dulling from a sharp scream to a softer echo. I walk up the hill toward what is now my home. That's when I hear a familiar voice. "Jude!" I jump from the surprise. Then I turn and there's Miles. He is panting, and his face is flushed from the cold air. I saw what happened. I didn't know what to do. I'm so sorry. I hang my head. Somehow it feels worse that Miles saw. "Jude," he says, looking at me. "That guy is a jerk." He squints up at the sun. It is a funny thing how a day can be so bright, but so cold. "I'm sorry," he says again. His words are jumbled, and somehow that comforts me, to know that he gets nervous and flustered too. "I just don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I say. He walks beside me for a moment, and we are both quiet. "Where are you headed?" I'm about to say my uncle's house, but instead I choose to be brave. Instead, I say home. Chapter 11. It turns out Miles only lives a few blocks away from Uncle Mazen and Aunt Michelle's house. He invites me to stop by to meet Sputnik, and even though I want nothing more than to go home and curl in a bed and pull the blankets over me and pretend I'm back in my old, sunny bedroom that smelled like jasmine and sea salt, I agree because I really do want to meet this dog. Sputnik is already outside when I get there, running around in the fenced yard. Miles opens the creaky wooden gate to let us in, and Sputnik instantly runs to him, jumping up and licking his face. "Down, girl," he says, but he laughs. Actually laughs, as he half-heartedly pushes her back toward the ground that is still covered with frozen leaves. His laugh sounds like a joyous rattle. I would like to listen to it again and again. We take turns throwing the ball to Sputnik and talking about simple things like when our next math quiz is and whether we think Mrs. Bloom is happy with the way the play is turning out. And then Miles says, "I just want to say that it's not that I'm saying I understand, because I know I don't, but I do understand what it's like to not fit in, to have people look at you like you're different and weird, and like that's somehow a bad thing." He stares at his black combat boots and throws the tennis ball again for Sputnik. "It's not a bad thing," he finally says. "You know?" I nod. His words drape over me, feeling like the relief of an umbrella in a storm, the comfort of a soft blanket on a chilly night. I pick the tennis ball up off the cold ground, and Sputnik runs over to me with excitement and begins to lick my hands, her tongue rough against my skin. I laugh, surprised by the feel of her tongue, surprised by all of it. Chapter 12. "Why do they blame us?" I ask Layla, a few days after the news of the attack, when we are sitting in one of the back rows of the theater. Layla gives me the shrug, the American one, the one I learned from her, the one when you don't know the answer but can't quite bring yourself to admit it. Or maybe sometimes you shrug because you do know the answer, but it's too painful to say. "Don't they know we hate this too? That we suffer too?" It's only after I say it that I realize Layla is no longer my we. She was not raised in a part of the world where it is no longer shocking to hear about bombs going off in cars, markets, mosques. Bombs going off while people are praying, celebrating, loving. I ask why this attack in particular is so upsetting to Americans. Why not last week in Lebanon, or the week before in Pakistan? Layla tells me it is because this attack took place in the West. She tells me Americans expect bombs to go off in Lebanon, in Pakistan, in my beloved Syria, but not in France, Britain, Canada. She tries to explain that it is like how we all expect it to be snowy in Antarctica, but sunny and warm in Tahiti. But if it snowed in Tahiti, that would be news because it would be unexpected. But no one bats an eye when snow falls in frozen Antarctica. It takes me a while to process this, that what Layla is saying is that Americans think it's normal for there to be violence in places where people like me are from, where people like me and people who look like me live, that they all see people like me and think violence, sadness, war. That's not true, I say. Syria wasn't always like how it is now, and it won't always be like that either. I feel like my brother when I say that. His courage, his belief, his strength echoing in my words. For a moment, it does not feel like Isa is missing all the way across the world, but instead, sitting in this theater next to me, giving me strength. It is these moments when I miss him the most. I wonder if, wherever he is, if he is thinking about me, about Mama with her swollen belly, about Baba all alone at his store. When I was younger and I used to get upset, Isa would say to me, "Too much sunshine makes a desert." I wonder, though, if it's possible for there to be too much rain. I am starting to feel like I am drowning, like I don't know how much longer I can stay afloat.